Welcome, everybody. My name is Barbara Sfera. I am the moderator for today's Sunset Salons program inside the Artist Studio. I'm very excited to be here. We've got 4 fabulous artists that we are going to feature today. Jan Brown-Checo, Cynthia Lockhart, Cedric Michael Cox, and Drew Steinbrecker. A couple of announcements that I have to make before we get started into our program. Number one, thank you for being here. Our sponsors, I want to clarify or mention, our Ohio Arts Council has been very helpful in us being able to put on our programs. A very special thanks to ArtsWave, and more importantly, a very special thanks to all those thousands of donors that give to ArtsWave every year, because without donors like you, ArtsWave would not exist. And without ArtsWave, what would the Cincinnati arts community look like? So we're very, very proud to have ArtsWave as one of our sponsors. I would also like to give a sincere thank you to Doug Yeager. He is our videographer who filmed all of these artist studios. He is with I Do Video Event Videography. So again, thank you very much, Doug, for your participation in this program. Remember to keep yourself muted and to keep your video off so that we can focus on our panelists and so we can see the videos very clearly. If you have any questions for the panelists as we go through the program, please type them into the chat if you are on Zoom and if you are on Facebook in the comment section, and we will try to get to as many of those questions as possible. We already have received about 4 or 5 questions from the audience already, so very excited about that. And at the conclusion of this, once this program is over, you are going to receive a survey. We would appreciate it if you could complete that survey for us. It provides us with some valuable information about our programming, which helps with our grant writing and helps us to continue to improve these programs that we have. So without further ado, we are going to go ahead and get started. So our format this evening is, first we are going to show a video of each of the artists. After I show the video of the artist, then they're going to be asked one question that they will answer. Then we'll go on to the next artist, ask that artist a question, then the next artist, ask that artist a question, etc. And once we have gone through all of those videos, then I'm going to open it up to all of the panelists and ask them questions. And we will go from there. So we're going to start with Cynthia Lockhart. Cynthia Lockhart is a very well-known Cincinnati artist. I call her sort of the fashion fabric artist of Cincinnati. So very excited to have Cynthia here. So we're going to begin with Cynthia Lockhart.
Hello, I'm Cynthia Lockhart. I am excited about you coming in to look at my studio and being a part of this art program, and just wonderful to be here. My studio is located in Springfield Township, where in my home. So normally my studio is located on the lower level of my home, the complete lower level of my home. However, in this pandemic, I have had water problems and what have you. And so I am upstairs in my home now with working on my artwork. So what I had downstairs is now upstairs. But very exciting because I love to have fabric, and I love my inspiration and my books and all of my supplies all around me ready for me to attack a project. I like to have a lot of my fabrics around me, my inspiration around me, and if like right now I'm in the middle of working with a piece that started out with plain muslin here, and this muslin, then I did a pour, a dye, not pour. It's not really a pour when you're putting it on fabrics. So you're really sketching with the paint. And you'll see the various lines, and so I use a Procyon dye for that. And then when the colors interact and mingle, then they create another color. And then here on top, you'll see an applique of some fabric that I haven't applicated yet, but it will be stitched down. And then I'll be adding some other details to it there. And then here goes another piece that at the very bottom you have a a tie-dye effect at the very bottom. And then on top of this, I have done a screen print of a beautiful leaf. And always I try to dream and imagine, and I really never want to duplicate what Mother Nature has made. I want to do my version of it and abstract it, make it move, make it feel, make you look and delve into the work. That's what I like to do. I don't like to replicate, I like to create. If you haven't started doing storyboards, I highly recommend you start. It's just like a sketchbook. Only the sketchbook, you're taking it from the sketchbook. You're taking 3D items and you're putting it up on the wall and proposing what it might look like. It really helps to stimulate you and take you from that book format to that sort of panoramic aspect. And it really helps you to, it helps me to be able to come up with what's the next step. Or if I don't get back to it for months, then one day it'll strike me and I'll go back to it, as opposed to your sketchbooks. I also still sketch in a book, which is great also, but sometimes that one thing that you want to get to, you'll take it out, you'll put it up on the storyboard, and you build. So this is a conglomeration. It's not a complete story that I would do for a particular call. Sometimes I'll do a storyboard for this particular call, and so the imagery is all related to that same subject matter. In terms of the tools that I use, one of the things that I couldn't live without, because I pretty much am a stitcher by machine. I do apply my applique and all of my trims by hand, but the rudimentary work is done on these industrial machines. Now right here, this piece is called the Pandemic Blues. So of course we've all been indoors, and we're all overwhelmed with this COVID and what have you. And I kept saying, I know I'm inspired to do something about COVID, but it didn't hit me yet. I thought it would be when I made the mask, but it didn't happen. But I had this beautiful fabric that I had dyed. It started here with this. And basically I ended up adding extra brush strokes of black on it as well. And then I have these wonderful orbs that I design. I always do these orbs. And so this one was called Pandemic Blues. And blues as in lady sings the blues. We sing the blues about this pandemic. This pandemic has us down, but we're not going to let it keep us down. We're going to stay as up and inspired to live and to walk forward past this pandemic. So that's why I called it the Pandemic Blues, but it has a lot of jazz and a lot of information on here. So if you can see some of these pieces that I've taken beads and I've made little beads with leather trim to attach. That's just the kind of the sparkle, or if you are ever looking at a night horizon, midnight or what have you, you see the twinkling of the stars in the sky. So I use brocades, I've used cowie shells, I have appliqued fabric, and then again my spirals and my circular emblems that I always do. And then this has lots of stitches on it. I don't normally do a lot of stitches, but the pandemic has been such a pain that it just kept me pushing on that machine and pushing on that machine. And also I have a lot of draped items on here. But this one's called Pandemic Blues.
Thank you, Cynthia. If you'll turn your video back on for me, please, Cynthia. Welcome back. Hi. So, I know you had to move your studio up into a much smaller space. I can't believe how much you have in that little room of yours. And I noticed you still had 3 sewing machines in that room. It looked like one was a Juki. How many sewing machines do you actually own? And how many do you use on a regular basis?
Okay, so I love sewing machines, and this, I'll quickly say this. This came about because my mother was a seamstress extraordinary. So I was inspired by her and always been at her side while she was stitching and cutting and all of that. So she really inspired my career to start as a fashion designer. So just have to give her the props of that. So sewing machines, I have about 10 or so. Some are vintage. I even have a sewing machine that I haven't picked up from a friend of mine, which is just a table sewing machine. So let's say 11 altogether. and they have various functionalities. One is the Juki, which is a walking foot, and people also know me as designing and creating handbags, and so you need that the walking foot apparatus. It has a walking like this to push your work through the machine and to have the stitch be smooth. Then I also have another industrial machine, which is right next to it. You saw it as I was standing there. And that's just a workhorse machine. It actually, you have different gauges that you can use, but it helps me to stitch and to quilt and what have you. Then over on the table, active in my studio right now is a smaller little Singer, actually. It's a heavy duty Singer. And it's not an expensive machine, but it comes in handy for if you wanted to, if you're going out to do a workshop or what have you, or traveling, it still does the work for you. But the sewing machine is one of the last pieces that I do. The whole process takes a lot longer. And by the time it's at the machine, it's pretty much together. And the machine actually helps me to stitch together everything. And again, some of those things are also done by hand as well. Some of the stitching is done by hand.
Great, thank you very much. We are going to move on to Jan Brown-Checo. Jan is an artist of varying skills. You will see in her video, she does many different mediums of art. So we're going to go ahead and move on to Jan.
Hi, I'm Jan Brown-Checo, and this is one of my studios. I'm in Clifton, and I'm very fortunate to have studio space in my home. This is the studio that is in the lower level, and because the floor is moppable, this is where I can do clay work and anything else that is messy, sometimes some glass cutting. And also this is where I have sort of my unfinished experimental things that sometimes when I don't feel like doing the serious stuff that somebody else wants me to do, I will come down here, turn on WGUC generally, and just kind of snoop around and let something tell me what needs to be done today. So it is spontaneous creativity in this space. Now, as you can see, a lot of books, and that is more inspiration. But seriously, these days, and probably it's the case with many people, as soon as I have to know more about something, I go online. I Google it. I try to pull down as many visuals as I can. And a good example of that was the series, the jar series that I have started on. This jar right here was the first one that I did, and so I did a composite of lots of plants that I'm familiar with in my garden. My summer studio is outside, and frankly from April until September I am out there gardening, either in the vegetable garden or in the flower garden, and so I like getting to know my plants well. And so then when it gets cold outside, I get to bring all of that love inside and turn it into pieces like this. This is a low relief carving, and this one is on a summer theme. And recently, because I felt that I needed to push it farther and larger, I designed a lid that is an autumn theme. This is slow drying right now. I always let my ceramics dry very, very slowly. So this is more of a high relief lid for a jar. This is the kind of drawing that I do to make my plan for that. And this is the jar in progress, which intentionally I have estimated the surface carving will probably take me to the end of March, which is great because then I get back out in the garden. I used to do a lot of figurative, and actually I'll be having a show next September, a group show next September, that is going to revive a lot of my figurative drawings. It is flat files and works that have been accomplished that lead into other works. This one right here, which is Flora, which is also very high relief, really pretty much put me on the path to do the jars. So there's always something that is moving to the next series. So this is my second floor studio. It is where quiet things happen. It's where I draw, it's where I sew, and it's where I paint as well. This is an example of a piece that has been recently finished, and For me, it's been a meditation on getting back to the garden. In fact, it's called We Have to Find Our Way Back to the Garden. And it is sort of a garden goddess, and it is first of all, a painting. It is a watercolor painting on wooden panel, but the background behind the glass is all collage of the kind of plants that are in our gardens here in Cincinnati. So here's a drawing table, and one of the things that is happening here right now is working on a project that will be installed someplace down on the riverfront near Serpentine Wall in Yateman's Cove. And so you can see it right here. There's this bench. And the bench is a feature of a walk and bike trail that's going all the way around the city of Cincinnati called the Crown. I like to do things with fiber in the cold months, and so generally it can be as simple as just some knitting while I'm relaxing at the end of the day. That large coat I made last year, but then also my sewing machine is over here. Lots of bins of fabric are down in the lower studio, and one of the things that I really enjoyed doing 2 years ago, these are fun, and come over and see these. These are soft sculptures, and they were done on the occasion of my husband's retirement. And he has met a whole cast of characters in the city during the time that he has worked for the city. And so to sort of like personify some of the energies that he had to work with and manage, I did this series of characters. And they were all from his socks. He was known for his decorative socks and his bow ties while he was working for the city. This is all part of the kind of soft fiber work that I enjoy doing, and it's always playful.
Jan, I love those little darling characters that you created. But you are known for your ceramics, and you have those beautiful pots you're working on. I saw 2 of your fountains in the video there. But what I didn't see were any glazes or a kiln. Where do you do that work?
Back by the washing machine. I have an area back to the back of the house where my kiln and stationary tubs, all of that kind of stuff is still at the same level, and several utility shelves full of glazes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
We are going to move on to Drew Steinbrecker. Drew is a graphic designer by trade. He does beautiful quilts. He's moving into some other things you'll see in his studio. So without further ado, here is Drew's video.
Hi everyone, I'm Drew Steinbrecker. I live in Over the Rhine, and this is my home studio. I love my home studio because I can come and go whenever I want. I can work in the morning if I want, or I can work in the evening. It doesn't really matter. One negative is I can't separate it, so I'm always kind of attracted to the studio. I'm always in here tinkering around, or I feel like I should be here. So this is my design wall where I work on my quilts. It's covered in felt, and I can stick the fabric onto it and it sticks because of the static. Also, I obviously have pins that I can use because it's a styrofoam. I also have things on here that inspire me. For example, this is some digitally printed fabric with my photography, which I'm starting to use in my quilts. This is just some hand-painted fabric that I did. This is dyed discharge fabric. I used bleach, and the dye comes out of the fabric, and so you can kind of paint on it. I've started using a gel plate, which is a way to monoprint, and I'm starting to test using fabrics on it. So that's kind of like my next in the evolution of my art. Let's see what else here. These name tags are from my classes at the Crow Barn, taking classes with Nancy Crow. And these are kind of like my trophies. The classes can be pretty intense, so I kind of see them as like my route, like the trophy for getting through the class. This is a quilt I completed this past spring, and then there's just more fabric over here. This is more digitally printed fabric, more dye discharge. These are some this is some fabric I got in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. My mom lives there, and we were there in the fall, which obviously is a big quilting area because of the Amish. So this is where I store all my fabric. I use solid colored fabric, cotton fabric, and I need a lot of choices, so that's why you see so much here, because I may use a little of this and a little of that, saturated colors, desaturated colors, and I just need a lot of option. I don't, I kind of improvise as I go when I work with fabric, so I just need to have a choice. I don't order fabric for a project, I just use what I have. Over here we have, you know, scraps. I think every artist or sewer can't really get rid of their scrap. So obviously this is my sewing machine where I quilt and start on my sewing projects. I bought this brand Bernina because it's Swiss. It's a real like workhorse. It's also you can see that it's pretty. It's a lot bigger than a standard sewing machine. It has all this space here, so I can put a lot of fabric through here. And you can see all my thread. I don't use a lot of thread, but you can kind of see what I use here. Fancy Italian thread right there. This, you can see some bags I have here. This is from Quilt National. I was in Quilt National in 2019. So I kind of keep that there as kind of like a reminder of what I was able to achieve.
Thank you, Drew. So I noticed in the video you were flipping through some hard-covered books and looked like you had some small print designs sitting on the table as well. So exactly what are they? Are they painted? Are they dyed? Are they quilted? What do you do with them? Kind of elaborate on those books that you had there.
Yeah, so instead of working in a traditional sketchbook, I started working in these children's board books. And you can see this I have not added stuff to the cover. This one I have, just so you can see that it was a children's board book. And then I just work using these mono-printed papers and just collage with them. The reason I use these board books is because these thick boards can take the glue that I use. In a traditional sketchbook, those pages would curl because I've used so much glue. And I just really have enjoyed using these books to get ideas and to work through anything I want to explore. I also have, as I said in the video, just these extra things I'm trying with fabric. I mentioned the bleach. I mentioned monoprinting on fabric. Obviously, I have the vintage fabrics and the digitally printed fabrics. I'm trying to merge the monoprinting and the quilting together. So that's kind of like my next step in my art.
Fabulous, thank you very much. And finally, we have Cedric Michael Cox, who is a fabulous painter. So we're moving on to him.
Hi, my name is Cedric Michael Cox. I'm a visual artist specializing in painting and drawing, and this is my studio in Roselawn, Cincinnati, Ohio. And this is a very unique space where I do my artwork, and you can see my sketches right here on the table, and I'm going to take you on a little tour of my creative environment. Hi, we're just going to go around and talk about a few of these paintings. This one is called Turning Point, a painting inspired by a project I did with Children's Hospital that talks about the emergence of life and the cycle of life. And this is another one that's actually going to be shipped out to Washington, D.C. that actually goes along the same theme of life and rebirth, and it's called Transcendence. And a lot of the paintings that you see in the studio here are done within the past year or two. This one is Rapture in Red. This is one of my favorites. And this one is one of the few paintings that's actually created that's based off the actual sketch itself. My work itself is derived from telling a portrait of yourself or explaining who you are from the inside out rather than the outside in. It's kind of like a intuitive self-portrait where I'm gathering all the influences, the people and the shapes and the things I do on a daily basis and kind of subconsciously letting them go on a piece of paper, and then somehow or another it ends up on the canvas through careful planning and colors. But usually I want to keep that same spontaneity that happens in the drawing into the painting. So they're kind of like this internal architectural anatomy of my inner spirit, if you will. That's what a lot of the abstract pieces relate to. Okay, this is my table of creativity, where I have wrapping paper for wrapping up paintings. And I have, of course, my various tubes of acrylic paint, along with my drawing pens and pencils and brushes and markers. But primarily I'm an acrylic painter, and I love acrylics. I like the fact that they just, you throw them on there and they dry fast. And it just worked for me. I was trained in oil painting, but because things are just moving so fast and things are on demand, I just paint with acrylics. I usually believe in starting with the darker essence of a color. People are surprised, like this is the closest thing I have to red, which is almost like this very cadmium bright kind of red. I don't really deal with red, but for example, I'll take something like a red oxide and I'll paint something that I want red. I'll start off with a red oxide, then I'll dry brush maybe some of this on top of it to get a really earthy look to it. If I want something that's going to be turquoise or this kind of light blue, I'll start off first with like this deep darker blue, or even go any darker than that. The whole idea is I like my shadows to already be there, and I like to pull light from the darkness. A lot of people think that's a reverse pattern of painting, but it's something I learned when I started working on murals. This is another work in progress. It's almost done, just like the previous painting. This is called Bundles of Joy. Bundles of Joy. Bouncing bundles of joy, something like that. So basically that's what it feels like you're dancing on the sun. It's the first piece that I did or finished for the new year. And yeah, I love it. It's very colorful, it's very patriotic, and it's very bright, and it's just fun. It just feels very animated and just fun. And so of course you have the blank canvases of commissions and works that are about to get started. I've always had my studio or my creative space where I've lived. I had studios in Over the Rhine, and I've had studios in Avondale, but I've always lived where I worked. When you have an idea, you want to wake up and attack it, and you want to be able to chill out and relax in a nice home environment, and then be easily ready to get down and get to work. I love this space because it's a long space. It allows me to walk back and see my paintings that are mostly on the wall, because I work on a painting at a time when it comes down to it being on a wall. But yeah, I just love it. I think it's great. I like to actually have more working walls, but in time, in time. Actually, my next project is a big 6x10 footer, so that's definitely gonna be one big painting at a time, so.
Thank you, Cedric. So Cedric, I noticed in the video that all of your finished works were displayed on an easel.
Yes.
And that your working canvases were taped to the wall with this nice big sheet of pretty painted plastic. Why is it that you paint on a wall as opposed to an easel?
Well, I don't like to bounce back. I mean, I'm very heavy-handed. Ever since I was a kid, I would color very hard and very rough. Of course, there's stable easels that that you can work on with paintings, but they take up a lot of room. I think display easels work fine for me as far as displaying my works or actually having my work so I can, or finished works that are like sources of inspiration. But I like the wall, because it focuses me. I can have like 5 or 6 paintings on the wall. Right now, that big 6 by 10 footer I was talking about is right behind me. So this takes up my whole entire wall. So, but yeah, so I'm forced. I can't go anywhere else but the wall right now.
Great, thank you. So if all my panelists can turn their videos back on, we are going to start some questions for all of the panelists and bounce around. Remember, if you have any questions for the panelists, please type them in the chat or in the comments if you are on Facebook. I will try to get to those questions if I can. So I had a question for all of the artists out there, because you all work in both wet and dry mediums. And so there are sometimes artists talk about having a wet studio and a dry studio, where you paint, where you dye is wet, where you maybe stitch and do some other work would be a dry studio. So how do you separate wet and dry, particularly for those of you that are in much smaller spaces?
I'll go first. I just make sure I keep them away from each other. I mean, that's the best thing. I think there's a designated area within my studio where I just keep the drawings away from the paints, basically.
That's a little bit why I have the upstairs quiet drawing and fiber studio, and then the downstairs messy, wet, dirty, and all the way out to the garage for some things. I've got a garage studio as well for the warm weather months.
Drew?
I have a bathroom right next to my studio, so I can use that. As far as keeping everything separate, I just have to work in one medium at a time and keep them separated.
Okay. And Cynthia?
Cynthia was looking for a way to get back in. What was the question, please? I'm sorry.
Oh, about whether you have a space where you work on wet versus dry. Having a wet studio versus a dry studio. Where do you do some of your dyeing and painting?
So my dyeing is done in my kitchen area, and so plenty of space there in that sink or what have you. And when I'm doing painting or I'm mixing, I use my large dining room table, where I'll mix in my my acrylics or my paints, my Procyon dyes or what have you. And I do also bucket dye as well. So I use the kitchen for that.
Okay, great. So we had a question from a pre-question that came in from the audience, and this person wanted to know some advice and recommendations for working in a limited or a small space. And several of you are working in smaller spaces. So what recommendations do you have for an artist working in a small space?
I do a lot of work actually on my kitchen table. So I just carry what needs to have attention that day to the kitchen, and we'll sit there sometimes all day long, not even see the time pass. So yeah, I think as long as you have a table space and a comfortable chair or a comfortable standing spot, you're going to be okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think anywhere can be a studio if you put your mind to it. It's about being as creative as you are as an artist, is how creative you have to be in working space and working in any space that you're around.
I agree also. It's where you feel most comfortable, where you're inclined to be. Sometimes I work on my kitchen table. Sometimes I work on, actually put two, tables, banquet tables. I pop those two together when I have to do a larger piece, or even then I have to pop another, because I do large pieces as well. I have to pop another table, so there may be 3 tables that I have to work on. But where it's most comfortable for you, and you'll find your way with that, and you'll learn and you'll feel it.
So Drew, this is very specific for you for small space, because seeing your studio, and I was surprised to see that your sewing machine was so close to that wall. And when I asked you about it, you said, yep, that's where it stays. And I work on my quilts. And you work on very large quilts with a lot of fabric. How do you manage to get that fabric through that? How do you manage that?
I roll it up like a jelly roll, and then it's over my shoulder. And I push it through that wider, I guess it's called a throat, maybe. I don't exactly know what it's called on a sewing machine. And I just push it through and do my best.
And get beautiful straight lines.
Yeah.
Okay. So Cynthia, you mentioned that you took positive inspiration from the pandemic and that it pushed you to create pandemic blues. How does your studio inspire you to take something negative and turn it into something beautifully positive?
Something negative. I really think that within our spirits, we have the positive vibes and the negative vibes. When I get into a negative situation, I tend to sketch. I'm a sketcher, so I'm constantly sketching. I have a sketchbook that I use, and I'm constantly drawing. I woke up this morning. I threw down so many sketches this morning. It's unbelievable. So in my lifetime, I would never be able to make all the sketches, but the sketches are a stepping stone, and it gives you an insight to where your spirit needs to be at that particular time. So I can really lose myself in the sketches. It's almost like I'm animated, and I'm a part of my own TV show or movie or whatever. So that's how I get by. Yeah, I hope I answered that right. Yeah.
And all of you referred to sketching and doodling. And tell me about your sketches and the inspiration you get from those sketches. And do others use storyboards as elaborate as Cynthia's storyboards? Just kind of talk about your inspirational process.
I always am going to lay something out. That probably comes from my background of doing egg tempera and fresco under Connie McClure. She was such a planner. You know, she really taught you to draw carefully and then to follow through with your plan. And so I tend to be that way. And then frequently I just will draw and redraw and redraw until I have the balance and the rhythm of the thing looking right. And then I'll go ahead and commit it to the either the expensive paper or the wood panel or the clay. Just planning. It's a planning exercise.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the planning is, for me, drawing is drawing out your ideas. It's kind of like drawing water from a well. It's the idea of maybe your finished product or your finished design or your finished work of art will be in ceramics, or whether it'll be in a drawing itself. But I think that initial sketch is drawing that energy out of you to create something positive and something that's active, that you believe in first, that can encourage you to keep going. I mean, everything I do begins with a drawing, unless I'm thinking of a color that's possessing me, and I'll paint the canvas that one color at first to get rid of the white. But I think it's that drawing, is that realization, that really going into your mind and using your fingers and having it kind of be the tentacles of the mind, and if you will, you know, just really capturing and recording what's happening in your head fast. And that's the cool thing about it.
And you mentioned that the can't remember the name of it, the red painting that we saw.
Rapture in Red.
Rapture in Red, sorry, was the closest to the drawing of any of your paintings. So where and how does that transition?
Well, that drawing was just, that's why I love that painting so much, because like I didn't have to, yeah, there's a lot of, what's the word? Spontaneity, when you actually, you're spontaneous while you're working on the painting. And that can happen with color, but also it happens sometimes with the forms. Something that's so small, when you enlarge it or redraw it onto the larger canvas, it becomes, you have to make more interesting or take a lot of it away. With that, it was just a balance, and it was real honest. So that's why I love that so much. And yeah, I think it was just, it's a great piece. I love it.
And Drew, from your graphic design background to
I use my sketchbooks as a way, one, when I kind of don't know what else to do and I want to do something, so they're pretty easy to just get in there and do something. And then two, to just kind of loosen up, you know. I always start with this before I would go to something, before I would start a larger project.
Perfect. Okay, so we had another audience question. So do any of you consider age a limiting factor to enter the art world?
Not at all.
No way. No.
Good.
You know, once I read about the amazing master Hokusai in Japan, who had a dictum that he said he didn't know anything at all when he was in his 50s. And when he was in his 60s, he was just starting to know a little bit. And when he was in his 70s, maybe there were a few things that he didn't feel like he needed to destroy. But by the time that he was in his 80s, he was hoping that every line would be alive. And so something like that for me is just I mean, you know, don't take your work too seriously. Just keep making it, keep doing what you think is the very best thing that you can create, and then keep moving on. I mean, it's never too late. It's never too early. It's never too late.
You have to be true to yourself and true to your spirit. I believe that artists are called from God to do what we do, because we are taking a big risk when we are putting together ideas and concepts that reach out beyond us. So we're filled with all of this energy and this emotion, and we're able to dispense it out into the universe. It can start very young, but I think it just gets better and better, like fine wine. As you get older, you become more clearer about where you need to go and more focused. You're not really concerned about commercial or markets or if it sells or whatever. You're just trying to put that inspiration out into the world so people can enjoy it.
Right. So how do all of you document or archive your work? Do you keep your test pieces? Do you journal your process? Do you maintain digital files? How do you, or do you just not really care?
I tend to take, yeah, I do too. Me too, Cynthia. I take a lot of photos in progress, frankly, because sometimes I can't see the thing in front of me. I have to just look at something else. I have to look on a screen, or I have to look at a printout of it, and then I have to draw on top of that, because sometimes we need, I liked what Cedric said about getting some distance, being able to walk to the other end of the studio so you can get away from the thing and then let yourself decide what has to happen next. So a lot of documenting. I've got a lot of archives. My objective lately has been to de-accession, move it out of here, put it in different collections. I am happy to let go of things at this point. It's time to downsize.
Anyone else?
I photograph. I believe in, I never was a great photographer. So even when, in the very beginning, right after college and started, taking art seriously, I've had the same guy document my stuff for the past 20 years, from slides to now. And it's just, I'm getting better at documenting the process and stuff like that. But yeah, I think photography is the best. Now, I don't keep documents or photographs of all my drawings. I just keep them all, in these storage areas. But eventually I'm going to have to start doing that. That's important, because, they are really the jewels. If something were to happen to these paintings and, I was left with these drawings for some reason, I would still be okay, because that's like the building ground from the ideas. I can look at all the line drawings to anybody else look the same, but I can tell you to which painting they came from, So yeah, the drawings are vital. They need to be photographed.
Mm-hmm. So someone in the audience wanted to, Drew, did you want to add? Go ahead.
I was just going to add, with smartphones, it's so easy now to document everything.
Very true. Okay, someone in the audience wanted to know, how many pieces do you produce in a year?
Depends on the year. I just got done finishing a project for Children's Hospital where I did 64 paintings. So
did you say 64?
64 paintings.
Wow.
And 64 paintings plus 25 new paintings for Casa Sykes for my retrospective. And in between that and other commissions, probably like another 20. So we're talking close to 100 paintings last year. But it depends. It depends on where you're at. It depends on scale of the paintings. It depends on also the demand in just being in that right place with your work. I mean, sometimes the biggest great breakthroughs for an artist are when you don't have a lot of finished works of art, but you're gaining that knowledge and that study, and then the next year you're just slamming the work out because of all the research that you put in. And some years are just years of you looking and investigating, experimenting. And some years are very, 2020 was had a lot of time, a lot of work, COVID. But we'll see what this year is going to be about. But I used to compare myself year by year, but now I don't do that anymore. I just work,
I agree with everything he said. And it really depends on the opportunity, because if you get a commission and you have a commitment to work on that commission, I tend to be fiercer when I have commission work, or I know I have an exhibition that I'm planning or what have you. So the downtime it's just difficult for me because I'm doing more of the sketching or what have you. And but I work on things pretty quickly when I have to get them done. So I think it's just different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So we had another audience question. So do you ever feel pressure to create good or Instagrammable art? And if yes, how do you push past that to discover, enjoy, etc.?
I saw that question, and, and one thing I will say, if you believe in it, anything is Instagrammable. But at the same time, one thing I would like to put out to all the artists, and just to the art world in general, once you post something on Instagram, as amazing as it is, maybe in person, it's no longer new. It's no longer new. It's already out there. That's one thing I pay attention to. So there's a lot of paintings I haven't posted that I won't until they're old, you know, in my mind. But then I could throw them out to the world. But yeah, I think that's something to think about.
I think that online posting is like archiving. I mean, for me, it's just putting it out there saying, well, okay, you know, this is a thing that I attach to myself and the time that I have spent and an idea that I had. And it's not for more than that. It's not really for, it's not for commodifying it. It's part of my expression. If I spend my whole day making these things and I have friends and family who are kind of interested to know what I'm up to, then I'm going to take some snapshots and put them online. But otherwise, it's really, the Instagram and the Facebook don't drive the making of the thing.
So much of what I share online is the process. So I mentioned earlier, documenting everything, and people are really interested in how you make something or watching you make it. So that's mostly what I share.
So Drew, there was a specific question for you from one of your fellow quilters. Priscilla wanted to know, what kind of felt do you use on your wall to hang the designs? What's your design board made up of?
It's the cheap felt from the craft store. Nothing fancy. Okay. And I've found that works the best. It has a lot of static, I guess. I don't know, maybe because it's synthetic. But yeah, it works really well.
Okay. So another audience question, what series of work or piece are you most proud of, or what was most successful?
I did a piece years ago for a call for the Freedom Center. It was called Journey to Freedom. And I depicted a slave, husband and wife traveling, running towards freedom. And I had to depict the feeling of being in the fields. I had to depict the moon. I had to come up with a feeling that you were right there with them. And from that quilt that I did many, many years ago, I ended up recently in 2019 going down south and traveling down south. So I do a lot of research and reading books and looking online or what have you, but I actually got to travel down south and I got to feel what it felt like being in the South and putting myself into the position of honoring my ancestors. And so that was just kind of a full circle for me. And yeah, just wanted to share that.
I think one of the projects that has been the most meaningful for me, it's not something that is a made by myself project. It was the experience of doing conceptual design and then creative team direction for the Black Brigade Monument down in Smale Riverfront Park. This was maybe it was 2013. I'm not sure. I frankly, I've completely lost track of time lately, but yeah, it was a project that took about 2 years, and I worked with remarkable sculptors and graphic designers and Tyrone Williams, who is an amazing poet. And we worked together as a team with the park board and with Mr. William Mallory Sr., who is the person who brought the story of the Black Brigade to us. And that for me was very meaningful. And I feel proud of what we've been able to establish down there on the riverfront as a team of creatives.
I would say the Avondale Pride mural, the original Avondale Pride mural that I did back in 2011. I was in a period of my career where I needed to make a change in the shift in the direction I was going with my work. So because I didn't have everything going, it was one of those years where I didn't have a lot going on because I didn't have one of those years where I was very productive. It was a time where I just really dove in to Avondale, the community and the culture and the people, asking people, what do you want to see? You know, maybe in the back of my mind, knowing what I wanted to do, but at the same time, it was just the fact that mural meant so much to so many other people. And that's what makes it magical. You know, when the piece is monumental to an artist, it's monumental also because it means so much to so many other people. And then the artist gets to look back and say, wow, now I guess it's bigger than I ever thought it was. And that's what makes it monumental, you know?
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was a piece I made at my first Nancy Crow class. It was a piece where I learned technically how to do what I had always wanted to do and had always seen in my mind, but couldn't achieve. So from a technical standpoint, it kind of unleashed everything and kind of set me on this artist path.
And you mentioned that those Nancy Crow workshops are very intense. Why is that?
She just expects a lot out of you. And you work really hard and long hours, and she wants the best.
So do any of you others go to workshops or classes or get guidance from other artists, or you pretty much just do your own thing at this point, or do you mentor other artists?
I'm a member of the Women of Color's Quilter Network. Dr. Carolyn Mazzalumi, who is just an incredible artist and incredible benevolent person in the art in the quilting scene. So I have done many shows with her and collaborated with some of the artists and what have you, and received many projects from it. But I do mentor former students, friends, and I teach art classes and what have you. And I have taken some of the classes, a quilt symposium, the quilt symposium up out of Columbus is a good one that I've done, that I've interacted with other quilters or what have you. But those things are very important. I seem to kind of be work alone with my work, so I've not really collaborated that much, and maybe one day I'll do that and enjoy that. So we all work in different ways or what have you. And I love Nancy Crow's work and the work that I see that folks are doing and what have you. So yeah, so we all work in different ways, which is so wonderful, and so giving our gifts.
I'm kind of notorious for pulling together groups of artists to do stuff. Whether it's here or in another country, I've really benefited a lot from our Sister Cities network. And so I have friends now who are master artists from around the world who have been to Cincinnati, who have participated in projects that I've planned and directed here, but then I go and I participate in the projects that they plan and direct in their country and in their city. And most recently, a couple of summers ago, because it couldn't have been last summer, a bunch of Chinese artists who I had worked with earlier in their place wanted to come to Cincinnati and do a plein air landscaping painting week. And so we put them all up here in our house. We have a lot of spaces where we can have extra beds and shared meals and shared days painting out. And then had an interesting show that was very automatic at Casa Sykes at the end of that week. And the last day that we were painting out, it was very, very strange. One of the Chinese national television networks happened to be in Cincinnati. And so they came to us while we were painting in Smale Riverfront Park and captured that and took it back to China to let China know that American artists were cooperating with Chinese artists. It was that's, for me, that cooperation, putting together projects where we can cooperate, for me is that's the gold. It's more important than any particular thing that I do on my own.
So Cedric, Dion wants to know how you get your lines so precise on your paintings, and do you draw the sketch out on the canvas?
Well, basically, you know, I put my hand on the canvas and I just steady it and kind of just honestly just do that. I think another way I've in the past have transferred drawings is that I actually draw it larger on another sheet of paper and put chalk on the back of it and do a transfer. This is not always the technique that I use, but that's one way to kind of get the accuracy of the sketch to the actual painting itself. But yeah, I find sometimes, like, I'm working on this 6x10 footer behind me, and because it's so massive, I almost felt like I was working on a mural. Well, it is like a mural. And I found myself not pressing my hand against it. I'm like, why am I not getting my line straight? I'm like, Cedric, slow down. Rest your hand on it like you always do. Don't get all geeked out about it. So I mean, yeah, and that's what you do. That's what I do. But I so monumentally think you're just like, you know, no, it's just, you know, your thing.
So Nancy had a question that was also on my list. Do you support yourself through your art, or do you have, you know, does your art pay to make a living, to pay the bills, or is it your full-time job, or do you have other jobs that pay the bills?
I'm an art educator. I teach over at St. Francis. For now, you know, that along with my work as an artist has, you know, kept things rolling. But right now I'm at a stage where the money from the art is coming in and it's equaling out. So it's a little bit of everything. I think I have a tendency of saying yes to a lot of things. So it's not just art itself, making the art in the studio. It's also collaborating, being part of group projects and murals and stuff like that. And then educational opportunities where you're the guest artist and you do mentorships and residencies and stuff like that. So yeah, I think the life of an artist isn't just the painting sold, but the experience of art itself. You know, from the art teacher in the elementary school to the artist in the studio, it's all making money from your art, or making a living from the gift that God gave you.
Amen. For me, art is, I was once on the phone with the IRS, and he was giving me some advice on my taxes. And he said, art is really hard, isn't it? And yes, if you are making a living as a artist and you're in it to make money, it would probably be the wrong occupation for you. So if you're blessed with commissions and you're blessed with doing wonderful shows and exhibits and being in a gallery that you actually work towards, that you work towards, and you network with people and what have you. So I wouldn't say that I was in it for the money. Thank goodness I'm a retired professor from the University of Cincinnati, and I have a pension. So I will eat. But I believe blessings are coming, and it's an ebb and flow situation. I do have to make the art. I have to make it whether I'm being paid for it or not. Normally when I'm making a piece, I don't know it's going to sell. We don't know it's going to sell. It's just a part of our passion and our energy that we have to put out in the atmosphere for everyone.
I started as a commercial artist. I was a graphic designer and an illustrator for the first 15 years of my career. And yes, everything that I made was a commodity. And so I also was working and living in Cincinnati. And so I found that I needed to be quite diverse in my styles and my ability to work with different clients at different levels. And so that really is the thing I think that has made my my career path be so all over the place, frankly. It really is, but that is because I feel comfortable being all over the place. The way that I have been able to support myself beyond that commodification early on has been with commissions and residencies, and being willing to be an art administrator sometimes, as opposed to the one that is actually making it. There are a lot of different needs for people who have design skills and convening skills and a certain amount of business acumen. So that's, for me, that's the only way that I've been able to put it together.
I don't make all my income from my art. I have other jobs that I have. Right now, it's maybe a third of my income, with the goal of it being 100% of my income. And especially lately, I've been teaching, which is new for me. So I think that's, as others have said, it's not always about just, here's a piece of art, sell it. There's so much more you can do as an artist. As I just mentioned, teaching, for example.
Okay, we are close to, close to the end of our hour, but we're gonna do a little speed question. So quick one word answers or very short answers, and each of you are going to just very quickly make these answers. Favorite color?
Green.
Turquoise.
Black.
Green.
Favorite tool or gadget you have in your studio?
Oh, slab roller.
2-inch folk art brush.
This double tracing wheel.
Cynthia?
Oh, I said pencil. I mean,
Oh, sorry, missed it. Pencil, love it.
Start with a sketch. So yeah, sketching.
Favorite medium to work in?
Acrylic.
Textile.
I got acrylic. What else?
Fabric.
Cedric, what?
I said acrylic, I'm sorry.
Whatever the day brings. I don't care. It can be dirt in the garden. That's fine.
Textile, leather, just fabric, any kind of fabrication.
And for each of you, what is the one thing that you want to see in your dream studio?
Oh my God.
Less stuff.
More space.
Yay.
Yeah, more space, obviously. That's awesome.
Yes, space.
So in closing, I want to ask each of you one more question. Where can we currently see your work or purchase your work? Do you have any upcoming shows? And I also want to let the audience know that on your program, each of the artists' web addresses are on that program, so you can always go look it up there. But right now, where can we see or purchase your work?
I'm in Gallery 708 in Hyde Park Square. Yes, and also through their website. Oh, and my next show that's coming up is Black Creativity in Chicago.
Wonderful.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm also at Gallery 708 and have a couple pieces there. I have work over at Casa Sykes. And I also have work over at through Seven Hills, online art purchaser or dealer. But Chicago, it's a piece of galleries in Chicago have my stuff. But if you just contact me directly, that's where you can get a whole breakdown of everything I have available. And yeah, that's it.
I'm a little bit like you, Cedric. Contact me directly if it's a commission or if it's to see what's in the archive. There's a lot there. But the next project that's coming up will be for Casa Sykes, and it's going to be called Humans Unwrapped. It will be a nude figure project with 4 other artists, and we will not only, it's going to follow that plein air painting a little bit that I did with the Chinese. We're going to be creating the drawings as we go through the month, and we'll have some figure models for us in the gallery. And as we go, we'll be pinning those sketches and drawings and paintings up on the wall. And yes, we'll have a few things that are, more formally framed and presented for all of the artists, but that'll be next September.
Cool.
I'm the most active on Instagram. It's at Drew Steinbrecker. And then also on my website, andrewsteinbrecker.com.
Well, this has been wonderful. You guys have been a great panelist. It's been very interesting. I want to thank you all for participating. It's been great. I want to thank the audience for tuning in. You've got great questions that came in. Hopefully I got to all of them. So thank you all very much for tuning in. Keep your eye out for a emailed survey that's going to come in that really helps Clifton Cultural Arts Center with its future programming, as well as some grant applications. So we do appreciate it if you could please fill that out. Also, our next Sunset Salon is on April 21st. It is craft cocktails. So a good time to learn how to mix a nice new pandemic drink for yourselves. You can find more details on our website at cliftonculturalarts.org. Also, I want to let you know that we've recorded this session. So if there was someone who couldn't see it or you want to see it again, it will be up on posted on our website. And each of the artists' videos are going to be posted as well. So you can take a tour of their studio again if you wanted to take a look at that again. I want to absolutely thank again our sponsors who were Ohio Arts Council, ArtsWave, Doug Yeager, who videoed everything and put up with all of our edits. Doug Yeager is with I Do Video Event Videography. Doug, if you're online, you may unvideo so we can kind of wave and say thank you to you. Not sure if you're on or not. And I want to make a very, very special thank you to Emmeline Benson, who is the Clifton Cultural Arts Center's Communications and Program Manager. Emmeline, unvideo yourself, show your face so we can thank you in person. Emmeline was behind the scenes doing all of the video ons and offs, turning on videos, turning off videos, organizing, sending emails. She is fabulous, and she is the logistical genius of Sunset Salons, among other things. So thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
It was wonderful. I love everyone's work.